If you're wondering whether you should get this or an A7S III, I've kind of summed it up into what I consider 3 different scenarios. There's a lot of differences between the FX3 and the A7S III that I don't really see a lot of people talking about. Some of it's more subtle than others, and a lot of it is user experience based, but let's take a look. Right, by now we know I sold the A7 III and I needed a replacement. It was either going to be another A7S III or the FX3. Ideally, it would have been the FX6, but I'm convinced that camera isn't actually sold in shops. You call up and it's just...
computer says no.
So after much deliberation, I went with an FX3. Sony wants you to feel like this is a cinema camera straight out of the box, even though we all just know it is an A7S III repackaged into a different body with a few other changes. It's the same design that the FX6 uses in terms of the color, the finish here, it's a magnesium alloy. And also, when you turn the camera on for the very first time, Picture Profile 11, S-Cinetone, is right there waiting for you. So it has to be a cinema camera. Also the fact that it says cinema line on the top there. Now the grip on the FX3 here is quite a bit different to the A7S III. When you feel it in your hand, it doesn't feel the same. This is a lot more triangular compared to the A7S III, which is a lot more curved. And I didn't love it to begin with, if I'm honest. And that's until I realized this isn't meant to be kind of held the same way. With the A7S III, you're kind of holding it like that so that your finger rests on the shutter. Well, you're not really using this shutter much on here because you have a big record button up here, which kind of led me to hold it like this. And that's when I realized that's kind of how it's meant to be held. It feels way more natural like that. The little indentation there grips that third finger of mine very well. I now have control over the zoom rocker right there, and the record button is right under my index finger, the same way it would be if I was shooting with the A7S III or another stills camera. Hey, yeah, intermission Chris here. So listen, a lot of you don't subscribe to this channel. You continuously watch the videos every week, which I'm thankful for, thank you, but you don't subscribe. So maybe try clicking that button down below, click that bell too, because it sends you the videos. YouTube doesn't like to send the videos out. There's no commitment. You're not signing up for a contract. Maybe try it. Okay, thanks. Bye. Now, of course, this camera does have a fan in it, which results in it being a little bit chunkier there. And straight away, if you're used to holding the A7S III, you will hold this and feel like it feels different because it is. It's bigger in the hand. I'm not a fan of this constant need for cameras to get smaller and smaller. I like bigger cameras. I feel like a heavier camera just feels more secure in my hands. Heavier means less camera shake. I look at the C70 and wish Sony would make a camera just like this in the size of the C70, but for now this will do. It's a step in the right direction. If you feel the same and you like a bigger camera, you'll like holding this compared to the A7S III. Something I find funny about the FX3 is that Sony decided to give us a proper way to mount a camera strap. Traditionally with a Sony camera, you're used to these little eyelets here where you have a little triangular, almost like a keychain thing, and your strap attaches to that. They were always terrible, they always rattled. On the A7S III, which I can't show you because I'm filming with right now, but they fixed it, they're a lot firmer, they don't rattle around. With this, you get proper ones now. The strap can just feed through it. The ironic thing is, no one's really going to be using this for stills. And you're not going to be using a neck strap with this kind of a camera for video, traditionally. So I kind of thought, okay, well maybe it's for a hand grip. Like on my A7S III cage right here, I have this tilt-a hand grip. It works really well for handheld shooting. Great. On the top there, it attaches just like it would right here. Apart from, there's nothing on the bottom. So it's kind of redundant. So it's a strange design choice. I'd be interested to see if a company can come out with something that takes advantage of that and then somehow, I don't know, goes in there. We'll see, I guess. Now there is a fan inside of the camera, which means it's constantly keeping it cool. If you think it's going to be too loud, you can turn the fan off while it's recording. Those are all settings that you can set up yourself. But it's so quiet. I'll see if I can... It's right next to the camera there. Let's see if the mic's picking it up. I can see a little bit of a waveform, but it's very quiet. I also quite like the smell that pumps out of that. But yeah, it's got a fan on there, and that's what adds that extra chunk. On the back of the A7S III, you have that little black multi-directional rubber thing. It's like a tiny little analog stick, I guess, like on a PlayStation controller. On the FX3, it's now on top, and I get why they put it here because it's right next to the record button. I can appreciate why it's there, but I think it would have been better right there. I love how the record button is nice and big. It's got an indentation there, and the red just stands out to show it's a record button, and it also doubles as a tally light. So you have technically four tally lights if you include the red ring around the screen there to show, which you can turn that red ring off if you don't like it. So basically a light on the top there, a big light on the back there, and a light right there. And these are useful because if you have something like the A7 III, you don't have any of these, nor the ring around the outside. All you have is the little recording symbol there to show you that you are in fact recording. So if you're far away from your camera or you're not too sure, it's hard to tell. So these are really, really useful. And if you talk a lot to the camera like I do, that one on the front there is really convenient, as well as this record button right here. You no longer have to do a little reach around to turn it on and off. You can literally tap that button right there. That's my record. Tap it again. It starts recording. I absolutely love that little button right there. The on-off button on here is now placed right here instead of it being your switch on the front to turn the camera on and off. And I do quite like the placement of this, to be honest with you. The fact that it's far away, it can't be accidentally touched. I will say there isn't really a lot of a click. It's very soft, and I would have liked more of a proper click to let you know that it's on or off. I guess they can change that in the future, but just being there alone, I like that. Something strange that I noticed, mostly because I put screen protectors on every screen that I get for a camera, there's a little tiny lip, one little lip there and one little lip there, and I'm guessing this is just so it doesn't sit flush against the back there and get scratched or something if you didn't have a screen protector. But what it means is when you go to put a screen protector on, perfectly straight, because you just slide the screen protector up against the edge of the lip. So if you put one on as well, I'm sure Sony didn't make it for that reason, but I noticed it. One thing I'll say about the FX3 over the A7S III is this is a lot easier to balance on a gimbal. And that's because the EVF has just been chopped off the top there. It's all entirely a screen now. You no longer have that electronic viewfinder, which means the center of gravity is a little bit lower. First time I went to balance this on the Ronin S, a lot easier to balance with the Sigma 24-70, just because it's more of a brick now. Also, in terms of the EVF, I use the EVF on the A7S III quite a bit in really bright sunny conditions, mostly because it's there. I used this for a shoot the other day, really, really sunny. Was a little bit skeptical about how it would go, and no issues with the screen. I had it set to sunny weather, and I could see everything perfectly fine. I did have my histogram up as well, just in case, but no issues, so pretty happy with that. Let's talk about the threaded mounts all around the camera. To be frank.
Is that Frank?
Yeah, that's Frank.
Other than the two on the top here, which are basically for holding this into place, because we all know if you put things on a hot shoe or a cold shoe, they can very easily slide off, and they do slide off, especially if you put a monitor on them. Unless you have it super, super tight, they'll always fall off. So having the screws there for that are good. But the rest of these, if I'm honest, are completely useless. You've got one there, which you might think, great, I'll put a side handle on. Well, you've only got one. So I can tell you what's going to happen. It's going to loosen over time. It's going to lose its orientation. You're going to get frustrated and you're not going to use it. Same thing with the one on the side, just there. And then this one, I really have no idea what the purpose of that one just there is for, if I'm honest. Yes, you have these on there, but really to mount anything to this camera properly so that it's locked on and it's not going to come loose or lose its orientation or angle, you're going to have to put this in a cage anyway. There was also a great opportunity here for Sony to put two on the bottom. They didn't. They only did the one, and means it's still going to get loose. It's still going to lose its orientation. It's not going to be straight after a little bit of time. They should have just put two on there. That was an easy way to fix this. I don't know why they didn't. That being said, I do prefer the finish on the outside of this. It feels a lot more premium. Obviously, it's the same design that they used on the FX6, the same like finish, same color and everything, as I said before. Yeah, I just prefer this. I feel like this will wear a lot better over time, as in it will wear less. One thing that they just had to kind of throw in there, I guess, to make it more of a cinema camera is it says shutter and it says iris right there. It just feels like the placement of that doesn't make sense. It feels like they were in a meeting and the one guy said, hey, where should we put the shutter and the iris, boss? And he was like, I don't care, just squeeze it wherever, I want to go for lunch. And so they did, and that's where it ended up. It just feels really squished in there, and it's so tiny, and why they even put it in there to begin with, I don't know. Just me, maybe. I absolutely love this zoom rocker on the top here, which has replaced where the on-off switch is on the A7S III. You can just assign this to zoom if you're using a Sony lens with power zoom. There's only a couple of them. Or you can change this to clear image zoom. So you get a little bit of reach with whatever you want to use. Just to have that there and not have to worry about custom button and then zooming in. I like that. Weird little design flaw, which I figured out quite quickly. If you plug in a 3.5mm audio jack and then you want to get to the HDMI door, there's no way to open this without taking that out and closing that back up again. There's a little lip on here, but that lip sits so flush against this door when it's open, there's no way to grab it. Literally no way. So you have to take something out, close that up, open that up, and then open that up, or leave both open if you're plugging in and out all the time. It's just a strange design choice. Now, that being said, they did take the door design from the A7S III and refine it a little bit more. These are a little bit easier to open, but they don't accidentally open. So I do quite like the flaps on these. Oh, I said flaps. I will say the A7S III is an easier camera to learn straight out of the box. It just kind of works very well. This has a few little weird, I guess, features because they're like cinema camera features, but they're also software quirks which will leave you scratching your head. A couple of examples. On top of the camera, you have 3 custom buttons, 1, 2, and 3. Your iris is just a technical cinema term for your aperture. 2 is your white balance, and 3 is your ISO. You're probably not going to want to change these. They are custom buttons, you can, but it says right next to it what they are. If you change it, you're probably going to get confused why it's doing something else. Also, because it's convenient to have a button to change your aperture, change your white balance, and change your ISO, right? Apart from it doesn't work like that. When you hit 2, which is your white balance, it gives you the option to change your white balance, as you'd expect. But when you click the iris button, it doesn't let you change the iris, it's locking it. And there'll be a little lock symbol that appears. It just flashes up there for like a second or so, just to let you know that it's locked. Now, after I started playing with it for a while, I realized, you know what, that's actually a good thing to be able to lock it. It means you can't accidentally change the settings. Also, another feature of the buttons is if you click and hold it, you click and hold iris, it goes to auto aperture. If you click and hold ISO, it goes to auto ISO. Click and hold it again, it turns it off. I like that. On the bottom of the D-pad, you also have the shutter button, which you can click and hold, and it does all the same things. Again, it locks and unlocks the shutter control. Here's where it gets a little bit frustrating. So I want to have the settings as this, the same as the A7S III, so I can chop and change between the two and it just works fine without me having to think about it. For me, that involves the front dial being my shutter speed, the rear dial being my aperture, and then the D-pad ring thumb thing here, whatever you want to call it, for controlling my ISO, which is what the A7S III does. I also want to be able to use these buttons on the top. If you change the settings on this camera so they're exactly the same as the A7S III, you can't use the dials in that way. It won't let you. I wrote it down here. You have to change the FX3's exposure control type to PASM, so essentially program, auto, shutter speed, or manual mode from flexible exposure mode, which is fine, okay? That's how it's on the A7S III. So I changed that mode. Great, I can now use the dials the same way I want to. But now you can't use these buttons. They're disabled because you're in that mode. So you have to change back to the other mode, and now I can't have my dials exactly how I want them. There's no way for it to work. But there is a workaround. You can assign a set of custom dials, which essentially tells the camera to make the dials work a certain way, and then you can assign a custom button to pull that set of custom dials, which you can do, I did with custom button 4, so it's pulling custom dials 1, which is what I have set up to how I want it. And now I can use that with these buttons at the same time. So I'm happy that I found a workaround and I can turn these on and off, but when you turn the camera off, the custom dials just go away. You have to pull them again before you can get them to work properly. If you change your settings, then they'll go away and you have to pull them again. But also, if I can pull them and have them work in the proper exposure mode that these buttons will now work, why can't I just have the dials that way in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. There's a workaround, it's kind of frustrating. Another little quirk. So you don't have your dial on the top now for custom 1, 2, and 3, which I like to assign to 2460, 124K, right? Instead, you've got a mode button there where you can just touch or scroll through. So memory 1, 2, or 3. That's fine. You would think by clicking that, it would just select those settings. It doesn't. It shows you those settings, and now you have to click on them. Now, I know that on the A7S III it's the same. It shows you the settings and then you confirm them. But on the A7S III, you're changing to that first and then just tapping it once. It's quicker to pull settings on the A7S III than it is on the FX3. What's even sillier is if you go to the setting that you want to, so like number 3, and then just push the shutter, it takes you straight to those settings anyway. So I would like to see a way to just click on that and it takes you directly to those settings, just so it's a little bit quicker. Sometimes I'm in really fast-paced environments where I need to quickly change between these settings, and those extra button pushes, it could be the difference of getting a shot and not getting a shot. So I figured out those little quirks and workarounds in case you have similar issues to me. You can just do the same thing. Now, with all that said, I do think the FX3 is a great little run-and-gun handheld camera. You're typically using a screen handheld anyway. You're not going to be using the VF there. And if you're wondering whether you should get this or an A7S III, I've kind of summed it up into what I consider 3 different scenarios. If you are getting one camera and you're just shooting video, get an FX3. If you have an A7S III and you need a B camera for it, get an FX3. If you want one camera and you're going to be shooting photos and video, although this can shoot photos the same way the A7S III can, it's the same sensor, same megapixels, I would still get an A7S III over this. Just, you need the EVF for photos as well. That's what I would do. That's what I think so far of this compared to the A7S III. Hopefully you got something from this video. Just wanted to talk about some things that I don't see other people talking about, like actual differences between this and the A7S III. If you like this video, you know what to do down below with all those buttons. You can click on them. It actually helps the channel. So yeah, Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.